I mentioned it before. My teams are a combined 27 games below 500, but that should be worse, mainly because the two of my teams, the Tigers and A's, just faced off in a rare 5-game series in Detroit ending today. The 5 games basically because of the compacted season because of the labor strife that pushed the season back a week. They had to play 5 games in Detroit this week, of which one of those, Oakland was actually the home team in Detroit, which is kind of a weird thing. They batted last is all they did. They didn't. I was wondering if they would wear like their home uniforms and the Tigers would have to wear their road uniforms. But no, the other thing they did was let them bat last. But that, in fact, was the only game of the series that the Tigers won. So somehow batting first helped them out in the series, which kind of incredible. The A's came in on a 9-game losing streak and righted the ship quickly in Detroit. Somehow they had no trouble. They seemed to fare well in Detroit. Actually, the announcers kept talking about their approach was just that all the right-handed hitters would just hit it the opposite way into right field, and it worked time and again, no matter who they were facing. So, it just brings me to the point where I don't know how to talk about the Tigers anymore. I mentioned earlier their futility is so frustrating. They're a hard watch, and a lot of Detroit Sports Talk Radio, especially this morning, they're talking about who to blame or if they're checking out on the Tigers, if Detroit sports fans in general are just not going to pay much attention for the rest of the summer, as they only have 9 wins so far. I will not be checking out, but I'm struggling to find ways to talk about this team on this podcast. So I came up with a new segment idea, and it is not an original idea. It is called Panic or Patience. And
all right.
I have to admit, I completely stole this from Buster Olney's the ESPN Baseball Tonight podcast. They had a Panic or Patience, just referring to teams in general, whether fans of a team should be panicking or being patient, which any fan base can do whatever the hell they want if they want to panic or be patient. But a front office or any of the players, they're always going to say they're going to be patient. What's the point of panicking? It doesn't really make any sense. So, but fans and podcasters like us, we can panic or be patient or do whatever the fuck we want. So the way I'm going to frame this, and this is probably going to, if this even continues, this is going to evolve over time because I'm not really sure if this is going to work well or not, but we'll find out. But for at least this first shot at panic versus patience, I'm going to break down the plights of Akil Baddoo versus Spencer Torkelson, who have both been struggling mightily over their first month. In fact, Akil Baddoo was sent down to AAA Toledo this week.
Holy Toledo.
Thank you. Actually, that's more of an A's reference there. But Baddoo was sent down after a mere 50 at-bats, 17 games. But his batting average was a 140. His OPS plus was 34.
Ooh.
Which
that's AJ Pollock territory last week.
Which but for those out there that don't know, average is 100. So he is 66 points below average with a 34 OPS plus. He was
Did you know, just real quick, did you know that the OPS plus average included pitchers? So I wonder if the average is going to be increased going forward. This is a total topic for a different time, but
includes pitchers what?
Over the years, the reason the OPS average was 100 was because it included pitchers at bat. So I wonder if it's going to get increased going forward.
It will for sure, because I mean that's a floating number because that average is always averaging out. So there are no pitchers batting it. That's interesting. So that's going to get tougher over time, but that's why it's a great stat, a next gen stat, is because it reflects real time, like what the rest of the league is doing, not just what you are doing in a certain moment of time. So, or if the whole league is not not putting
Yeah,
up
it might get
much
lowered
of an
this year.
OPS.
It really
Well,
might get lowered this year.
well, that's the thing. It by definition has to be based on the average, whatever that happens to be at the time. So it's a good snapshot in time, what you're doing versus the rest of the league. So, on the other hand, Spencer Torkelson, who has not been demoted, has an OPS plus of 63, which is still horrendous, but not quite as horrendous as a 34. He has a 149 batting average. Very much struggling. And I think the way I'm gonna break down this panic versus patience is based on what that player should be thinking, or what needs to be happening from here on out. And I think Akil Baddoo needs to be in panic mode. He actually was demoted his first night in AAA. He went 0 for 5 in Toledo, which is another sign that he has just not figured it out. But the main thing is, he is a Rule 5 pickup from the Tigers last year, and was such a fun part of the Tigers story last year. Really hit the ground running. Had walk-off home runs, was a catalyst for the offense. I kind of thought of him, and I thought of this today. He was kind of the poor man's Tim Anderson in a way. The Tigers' Tim Anderson, just kind of getting on base and creating havoc, just doing lots of fun things for the offense, and was a solid defender too. But those things have escaped him in 2022, and part of the dynamic, at least last year, is a Rule 5 pickup cannot be sent down to the minors without just being waived. They have no options essentially, so you can't just send them down to AAA the way they did this year, where that was clearly an option for the Tigers, and they exercised that immediately just because of his performance. But they didn't need to worry about that last year because he got off to such a great start and really continued throughout the year. But I would put Akil Baddoo in panic mode at this point, because his career could be jeopardized at this point if he can't turn it around quickly. He was already an afterthought with the Twins, and the Tigers capitalized on that and made the most of it in 2021, but that has not continued this year. The story is radically different for Spencer Torkelson, and I think he and the Tigers have plenty of reasons to be patient in his case, even though his numbers are not. Was that Stevie Nicks?
It was Stevie Rose.
You're trying to do
it's
Axl Rose there?
Axel okay. Nicks.
Thank you. Thanks for playing along. Torkelson has many factors going in his favor. He's not going to be sent down for many reasons yet. They might need to at some point, but he's got a longer leash, mainly because he is a top prospect, number 1 pick in the draft. He has struggled historically every time he got promoted. Specifically last year when he was moved from high A to double A, and then from double A to triple A eventually, he struggled for the first several weeks at each of those steps. So he's had this similar pattern where it takes him time to adapt. And I would think this transition, of course, would be more difficult than those before. So this shouldn't be too surprising that he is struggling. The other part of it is he is a fantastic first baseman. He is really shown to be really their best first baseman they've had in quite some time. As Miggy played first base for several years, but I wouldn't call him a Gold Glover. Jonathan Scope was forced to play first base quite a bit outside of his natural second base position, which he was adequate, but not necessarily a Gold Glover in any way. Torkelson has been a defensive asset for the Tigers, I'd say. And the Tigers really don't have a good option to play first base at this point. They do not want to force Miguel Cabrera to play the field. That has been their strategy all along this year. He is the full-time DH, and I think that is a fantastic plan. I endorse that wholeheartedly to keep him healthy. He doesn't add a whole lot of help defensively. He's not wouldn't call him necessarily a liability, but he's not an asset on defense. So they want to avoid that at all costs. You could move Scope back over to first base, but that does not make your defense any better. So keeping Torkelson at first base is in the Tigers' interest for sure. You talk about what if they do eventually have to move him down to AAA just to get his head right, if he continues to struggle this way any longer, much longer, Tigers don't have a whole lot of options even at the AAA level to replace him. The only one that's being talked about at this point is Cody Clemens, which you might remember that last name, as his father is Roger Clemens. Cody is not a pitcher. He's listed as an infielder / outfielder, which means he plays pretty much everything but catcher. It's interesting. He has not played much first base until this week. He played first base last night, and he might be playing tonight actually in Toledo as a first baseman. But he has been raking, is why his name's been coming up. He's got 7 home runs, an OPS over 900. He's ready to be called up if there's room for him. I don't think he would be the right answer at first base, at least if that was the desperate situation the Tigers find themselves in, where they eventually need to drop Spencer to get his mind right. But all those factors combine to make me think that the Tigers and Spencer Torkelson just need to be patient. He'll figure it out eventually. The talent's there. We've seen him figure things out eventually. So unfortunately for Baddoo, that track record is a mere 1 year long, and he doesn't have the same kind of rope that Spencer Torkelson does. So that concludes our first panic or patience segment. We'll see where that evolves from here. We'll involve other teams. Maybe we'll be formatted a little bit differently. We'll see. Because you had an idea to talk about your White Sox with panic or patience, but we'll figure out how that works going forward. So,
I mean,
hopefully you're entertained by that at least.
Are you also panicked that the Tigers are the only team in baseball who averages less than 3 runs a game as a whole?
I think I brought that up at many points in this show, that I'm not necessarily panicked. It has led to me drinking heavily, more heavily than most shows. I'm on my 3rd beer of the show now.
All right, so, well, there you go.
I'm not panicked. I'm very relaxed. I'm drinking a nice IPA, high ABV IPA. So
there you go.
May or may not have noticed. So.
Word Hole Media.